Do you ever get into this mode where you feel like you don't want to do a single thing? Or maybe you keep asking yourself, why am I so fucking lazy? Well, today I'm breaking down the problem of motivation. Why are you lacking it and how to get it? So maybe you can relate to this, but sometimes I get into these moods where I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to do work. I don't want to do anything. I just literally cannot get off my couch to save my life. I'm truly rotting. And I think sometimes when I'm doing this, I could stay there until I die, honestly. Like nothing is moving me. And so over the years, I've figured out both a short term and a long term solution to this. And I'm going to share both of those with you today. So, motivation comes down to a lot of times shame. Whenever we are sitting around not feeling like doing anything and we just can't get out of our heads about it, we start to actually create this loop of shame where we shame ourselves into saying, why am I not getting up? Why can I not motivate myself to do something and be productive? And that makes you feel worse. And then you actually wind up avoiding doing anything because it feels better to just sit there and do nothing. And so a lot of times we feel stuck because we have no motivation. Like we're lacking the drive to actually get up and take the action that we know we need to take. And that's what's causing us to stay even more stuck. So it's really important not to shame yourself about this. And it's really important to realize that sometimes we just get into phases. And the reason that we get into these phases is because we let our surface level desires at the forefront of our consciousness take control. Like we truly get out of control of our desires. And obviously, your brain will always choose the path of least resistance. So if your brain can conserve energy and it can conserve physical energy and mental energy, it knows that it can save those and reserve those if there comes a situation in which your life becomes in danger. And so naturally it leans towards that. It leans towards indexing on rest because if you think about it, back whenever we were evolving and we were like cavemen, life was very fragile, right? Life was fleeting. Life could only last like a few years sometimes. So you always had to be on the lookout. And so we developed this, we internalized this, and it's stayed with us throughout the years and throughout our evolution journey. And we naturally gravitate towards just doing whatever provides us the safest, most comfortable, easiest, most restful path so that whenever we come across something that could be life threatening, we have the energy reserves to actually avoid that thing. But if you think about it, in modern day society, we don't really have that many things that come across our desks every day that can threaten our lives. I mean, sure, it's dangerous to live, but if you really think about it, at the end of the day, we aren't really like fighting for our lives 24/7. We aren't getting attacked by animals or other tribes or, having to figure out where our next meal or our next glass of water is coming from. And so for that reason, we don't need this like defense mechanism that our brain has naturally instilled upon us. We don't need to always be resting. So how do we shift that? And how do we actually understand that and then figure out a way to actually motivate ourselves whenever we know that we need to get shit done? So over the years, I figured out several ways to solve this motivation issue. And all of the solutions fall into two categories. One is like short term. How do I quite literally within today, get off my ass and do something? Insert Kim Kardashian quote, get off your fucking ass and get to work. And then I've also bucketed solutions into long-term solutions. So how do I, over the course of a year, ensure that I maintain motivated or that I maintain my motivation and that I stay motivated to do things? And so I'll just break down the short-term ones first because I think they're a lot easier to do. A lot of times the short-term motivation comes from building momentum. So if you think about this and you break it down, our bodies and our brains are very reward-based, very dopamine-based. So we literally go out and seek whatever the nearest source of dopamine is because that's what our brain will always index towards. So if you can use this to your advantage and hack it, it actually can help you get out of this laziness or like this lack of motivation. So what you do is you literally trick your brain into building the momentum to get out of this and to get motivated. So what you do is you start with one menial task. Say like, okay, I'm sitting here on my couch. I don't really know what to do. My first task is that I'm going to pick up my remote and turn off the TV. Whenever I do that and I tell my brain I'm going to do that, then I follow through on it and I actually do it, I get a little hit of dopamine. Next, I say, I'm going to get off the couch and stand up. Whenever you do that, you sit up, get your body off the couch, your brain gets a little hit of dopamine because you did what you told it you were going to do. And then next, for instance, say, okay, I'm going to walk to the fridge and pour myself a glass of water. You walk over to the fridge, you pour a glass of water and you drink it, another hit of dopamine. And by this point, your brain has already started like picking up on the fact that you're completing this like reward cycle where you tell yourself you're going to do something and you complete it and then you go out and actually do it. It gives your brain dopamine. So it realizes and recognizes this. And so it starts to shift its perspective away from the dopamine that you would get from laying on the couch to the dopamine that you're getting from doing these small actions. And so, again, knowing that your brain takes the path of least resistance to the next source of dopamine, we use this to our advantage. And we start shifting it and guiding it like a car away from the negative road of staying on the couch all day towards the road of, okay, here are some small tasks that I'm going to do to start building up and like controlling my dopamine intake. And so after you do those 3 tasks, maybe you move on to something a little bit bigger. Maybe you say, I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes and write. And then you do that. That's an even bigger hit of dopamine because it was a bigger task and you actually completed it. And then next, say, I'm going to brainstorm a little bit about a business plan that I've been putting off. And then you set a timer for 5 minutes and you say, I'm going to do it for 5 minutes. And you sit down, you do it, you don't get distracted, and you finish it. Huge hit of dopamine for your brain. And so then you've already built this momentum and you've tricked your brain into thinking that it has a very, very easy source of dopamine in completing these tasks. The next tip is similarly to the first tip. We know that our brain always seeks out the next cheapest source of dopamine in order to fulfill itself. And I found that one of the most important and the most impactful things I've ever done for my motivation is I made a rule for myself that whenever I wake up in the morning, for the first 30 minutes that I'm awake, I'm not allowed to open TikTok. And you know why that is? It's because TikTok is truly like the biggest dopamine thief you can ever think of. Whenever we get on TikTok, every video that we see, we scroll to the next one, we get a burst of dopamine, like a really, really, really intense, sharp, pungent hit of dopamine. And our brain loves it. And it's like, okay, let me go to the next one. Let me go to the next one. And before you know it, you spent 30 minutes scrolling. And what's happened is all the dopamine reserves that your brain had stored up and that it was going to release to you over time as you complete tasks throughout the day, those all get pulled forward into that 30-minute span. So whenever you finish that 30-minute span and you try to get up and go about your day, you might start feeling like, oh my God, I don't want to do anything today. I feel so fucking lazy. I don't want to do a single damn thing. It's because you just watched TikTok for 30 minutes. I'm not even kidding. There's research behind this. It happens to me. Whenever I do this and I watch TikTok in the morning, I don't make it to the gym. I don't cook for myself. I don't have a productive morning. I don't want to go to work. I don't get on meetings. I skip meetings. I slack off. I go and lay on my couch all day. It's because you've literally robbed yourself of the dopamine that you were going to have throughout the day in that 30-minute window. And for what? Think about it. If you make it to the end of today and you think back on the 30 minutes you spent watching TikToks at the beginning of the day, do you ever remember one of the videos? Do you remember like 2 of the videos? Probably not. So what was the point of it, right? And then the next few tips I'm going to get into are a bit more heady. They're a bit more introspective, and I don't want to say that these are ways to like scare yourself into getting motivated, but effectively that's what we're doing. So the next 2 tips are going to be using the power of visualization to get you to motivate yourself. The first one is imagine yourself whenever you're 90 years old. Truly just like close your eyes, think about where am I when I'm 90 years old? What am I doing? Who am I surrounded by? What am I doing? What kind of life did I lead? And then think back on today and what you're doing today. If at 90 years old, you're envisioning yourself at 90 years old, you're looking back on yourself today, and you ask yourself this simple question: is what I'm doing today in this moment a waste of time or not? If the answer is yes, like get up and do something else, because guess what? The 90-year-old version of yourself is like your truest reflection of how you want your life to go. So whenever you think about this and you think about yourself at the end of your life and you look back on yourself and say, okay, what did I do in these moments when I didn't feel motivated? Like, what kind of person was I? Did I succumb to my desires to sit on the couch and do nothing? Or did I actually force myself to get up and actually make something out of my life? And I guarantee you this will be like one of the most powerful motivators for you. If not for me, like I genuinely sit on my couch sometimes and I'm like, okay, if I ask myself when I'm 90, what was my biggest regret? It's probably going to be like all those days that I spent on the couch not doing something or not making the most of my life, right? And so this just kind of like puts things into perspective and makes you really wonder, like, what am I actually valuing day to day? Why am I actually not getting off the couch and making the most of my life? And then the next tip is a little less scary, but definitely useful. And this one worked for me whenever I was, in my first corporate job and I realized that it wasn't really what I wanted for myself. And that moment of clarity only came after I did this one tip. And that tip is look at someone who is in the same position as you, but 5 years fast forwarded. So for me, I was in corporate America, I was a financial analyst. If I thought about the next 5 years, a 5 year path would probably get me to a title of like manager of finance or senior manager of finance. And so I looked around, all around me to my colleagues, and I looked at the senior managers and the managers. And I asked myself, do they seem happy? Like, do I want their lives? And they were miserable. They were staying at the office until like 8, 9, 10 p.m. They were honestly, sorry to say, like out of shape. They had nothing really going for them outside of work. They just kind of led boring lives. And I was like, wait, that is so not me. Like, I want so much out of life. I can't even fathom just being stuck in this cubicle for the next 5 years. And that lit my ass on fire. And I immediately started thinking about my exit path. Like, what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to make of this? Like, I don't want to live in Dallas for the rest of my life. And so I figured out a way to move to LA. Granted, it was still like in a finance role, but it was getting closer to what I wanted to do eventually. And yeah, over time, I just kind of started making small changes to get to where I am today. And it all was because of that one moment where I thought I was content doing that finance job back in Dallas, but really what I was comfortable and I was unmotivated to like challenge myself and to create more for myself. And so I snapped out of it by literally envisioning myself in the shoes of somebody who I would become in 5 years. And that was not a picture that I liked. So I changed. And my last tip for getting motivated is a simple one, but it's simple in theory, hard in practice. And that is make 2 new friends that are pursuing something that they deeply love and that they deeply find passionate in a radical capacity. Truly, they are waking up day in and day out and like hitting the ground running, making the most of life, doing something that they truly love and that lights them up. There is no better fuel for motivation than to have those people in your life that you're surrounded by. I'm not even kidding. Because whenever you wake up and you have the desire to sit on the couch and then you maybe open your phone and you get a text from them saying like, hey, just like booked a photo shoot today with this new client and I am absolutely obsessed with them and I like can't wait to show you the pictures. And maybe your other friend texts you saying like, hey, I just made some new music today. I can't wait for you to listen to it. And you see these people like living out their lives and pursuing their passions and you're sitting on the couch watching TV. Nothing wakes you up faster than that. Nothing gets you off your ass faster than like seeing someone that is a peer or that you consider a colleague doing something greater with their lives and you're just sitting there doing nothing. I'm not even kidding. This is the biggest hack and the best way to honestly get yourself out of the zone of lack of motivation or like the zone of laziness. And this works because your brain subconsciously and on a very microscopic level or on a neural level, it literally mirrors what other people around you are doing. So this is why it's so important to truly be an auditor when it comes to the people that you surround yourself with and that you spend the most time with, because you're out of control of this. Like you truly, if you know that your brain will default and absorb the behaviors of the people around you, ask yourself, are those behaviors that I want? If the answer is no, like, sorry to say, you need to shift some of your time away from them and towards people that are doing something with their lives. So now that I've given you some short-term tips to get motivated in the moment or like in the week, I want to give you some longer-term tips to ensure that you stay motivated even after these like small moments of motivation within the day or within the week. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is build a habit of motivation, build a lifestyle of motivation to become a motivated person. And to do that, we have to think longer term. And I talk a lot about this on my Instagram, but the way you do this is by slowly aligning your life with your value system. Because right now, when you're unmotivated, it's probably because your to-do list lives over here in one realm and your value system lives over here in another realm. And they're so far apart from each other, you just have zero desire to even touch your to-do list. But whenever you can bring the two realms closer together, you start getting more motivated to do those things on your to-do list because they're basically physical manifestations and representations and externalizations of your value system. And so whenever you're doing those things, you're reflecting your value system, and your value system reflects what's most important to you at the end of the day. So whenever you do that, you automatically intrinsically become motivated to do those things. So what you have to do is go in and do surgery on your value system. And this is painful work, and it's like not something you do just one day. It's something that you have to live, and it's a practice. And I have to do this every day when I wake up. But what you do is look at a list of 7 or 8 values. Like you can literally Google like what are 8 values in a value system, and it comes up with a list, right? And what you're gonna do is look at this list and go down the list and quite literally look at each word, close your eyes and visualize the word and ask yourself, like rely on your body for this, rely on physical cues. Whenever you envision the word, say that it's accountability and truly like just close your eyes and say accountability over and over to yourself. Do you feel something expansive in your chest? Do you feel this like sensation of opening and like you want to be pulled towards that feeling? If the answer is yes, take a red pen out and circle that word. And what you're going to do is do that with 2 or 3. So find 2 or 3 from the list that have that expansive feeling for you. And then for the entire next 2 weeks, I want you to, at every decision point, every time you have to make a decision or ask yourself a question, truly just ask yourself, okay, does what I'm about to do or does this choice align with my value of accountability? Does this choice align with my value of trust or respect? If the answer is no, don't do it. Like just stop doing those things. If the answer is yes, that's a great sign. Go ahead and do that full force. Like go ahead and push forward and, pave the way, do that thing. And over time, what you're going to do is you're going to start shifting your literal physical calendar towards doing things that only align with your value system. And whenever you do this, you automatically become more motivated because you're living out your values every day. And so that's how you actually start building a value system long term and figuring out who you are. Whenever you have a framework and a lens to filter your life through and to filter decisions through, that's how you actually have a strong internal compass and a strong sense of self. And you become magnetic because people are attracted to you and gravitate towards people that have strong senses of self. So now that you've figured out a way to motivate yourself every day to live out your value system, over time, you can't help but actually be motivated because you're automatically set up and your to-do list is set up to do things that you care about. And so this is the biggest hack, right? And you build long-term motivation doing that. So whenever you can build the long-term motivation, and then whenever you have little blips within that, feeling unmotivated on a certain day, you have the short-term tricks, then you're constantly living 99% of the time as a motivated person. And that's the biggest hack to success, right? Whenever you start consistently building a life where you're living a very high percentage of it in a motivated space, in a motivated headspace, that's whenever you become successful because at the end of the day, success is a mixture of skill, consistency, and opportunity. So if you can control 2 of those variables and always be building your skills, always being consistent, always being motivated, whenever an opportunity comes along, you're going to be ready for it. And so the most successful people know this and they implement it day in and day out. So I really hope this was helpful, and I really hope you can find a way to stay motivated and to get motivated today and every day in the future. And I just want to open up the floor for any questions because over the next few weeks, I'm going to be testing out a new format. And what I'm going to do is answer questions that I get on Instagram on my podcast. So if you have any questions about motivation, or even last week I talked about emotional regulation, and the week before that I talked about the quarter life crisis. And I also did an episode on loneliness, which got a lot of engagement. So if you have questions about any of those episodes, I want you to DM me. Like DM me your deepest, most burning questions, and I'll answer them on one of the upcoming episodes. because I want to start engaging you on Instagram and like listening to your feedback and really just answering any questions you have. And I think that'll be a great forum to do it. So yeah, check out my Instagram. It's at Ethan Grant Mark. I'll link it in the show notes as well. And drop me any questions you might have. And eventually I want to move towards like a live Q&A show, because that I think would be so cool. And I would be like so impassioned by that. So I truly can't wait to try that format out one day. But yeah, this is the first step towards that building block. But anyway, thank you so much for listening today, and I hope this was helpful. And remember, like, you have it within you to motivate yourself. It's just a matter of like hacking the system and figuring out a way to use your brain to your advantage and to work with your brain, not against it. So I hope this was helpful, and I'll talk to you again next week. All right, bye everyone.